One of the most famous stories is the tale of Noah's Ark, found in the biblical book of Genesis. This story describes a global flood sent by God to cleanse the world of wickedness, sparing only Noah, his family, and two of each kind of animal aboard a massive boat. It's a captivating story, but how much is grounded in history? Is it merely a myth or a legend with some basis in reality? Or could there be evidence that it actually happened? Keep watching to discover if Noah's Ark was a myth, legend, or reality. Historical context of the Noah's Ark story. To fully understand the story of Noah's Ark, we must first explore the historical and geographical setting of Noah's time. The story is believed to have occurred in ancient Mesopotamia, in modern Iraq, Kuwait, and parts of Syria and Turkey. This land, nestled between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, was home to some of the earliest civilizations, including the Sumerians, Akkadians, and Babylonians. The landscape was often shaped by seasonal flooding, which may have influenced the origins of flood myths across different cultures from this region. Noah's story takes place around 2350 BCE, although this date can vary depending on how the story is interpreted. Some experts believe it could have occurred in 5000 BCE, the same time as a catastrophic flooding event in the Baltic Sea, which may have been caused by melting glaciers raising sea levels. The story of Noah's Ark. According to Genesis, the Bible's first book, Noah was a righteous man who lived in a world filled with corruption, violence, and sin. When God looked at earth, he saw that all men's thoughts were evil, and he regretted creating the human race. However, God noticed Noah's righteousness and found favor with him. Seeing humanity's wickedness, God decided to end the corruption by sending a great flood to cleanse the earth of all humankind. But because of Noah's goodness, God chose to spare him from earth's purge. He warned Noah of the coming flood and instructed him to build the ark, a boat of cypress wood. He told Noah to coat it in pitch, make a roof, build lower, middle, and upper decks, and put a door in its side. When completed, it would measure 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, and 30 cubits high. That translated to roughly 510 feet long, 75 feet wide, and 37.5 feet high. It was a massive vessel. Noah was to bring his family along with two of every kind of animal to repopulate Earth after the flood. He had a wife and 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, each with a wife. Noah's family of 8 was to board the boat alongside a male and a female animal from each species on Earth. They would be the only remaining life after the flood. By the time the flood came, Noah was 600 years old. Though the Bible does not state it explicitly, many interpretations suggest it took him 50 to 100 years to build the ark. All the while, his neighbors mocked him relentlessly. He was building a massive boat on dry land, and they all believed he had gone insane. They called him a fool because there was no evidence of rain or a flood. No one believed him when he said God had told him to build the ark, and no one heard his warnings about the coming flood. When the ark was complete, God spoke to Noah again, instructing him to board the ark with his family and a mating pair of each kind of animal. Noah did as he was commanded. 7 days later, God shut the ark's door and the deluge began. The rain lasted 40 days and 40 nights, submerging the land beneath the waters. Every living thing on the face of earth was wiped out, except those aboard the ark. The entire world remained covered in water for 150 days after the deluge ended. Noah, his family, and the animals floated for months, hoping to see land again. On the 150th day, the water began to recede, and the ark came to rest at the top of Mount Ararat, where it would stay as Noah and his family waited for the waters to recede. 2.5 months later, the tops of the mountains became visible. After 40 more days, Noah sent out a raven to see if there was exposed land. The raven flew back and forth but never returned to the ark. Next, Noah sent a dove to see if the water had receded. However, the water was still so high that the dove could find nowhere to perch, so it returned to Noah, who brought it back into the ark. He waited 7 more days, then again sent out the dove. When the dove returned, it held an olive leaf in its beak. The water had finally receded from earth. After 7 more days, Noah sent out the dove one last time. This time, it found a perch and never returned. After nearly a year aboard the ark, Noah looked outside and saw that Earth's surface was dry. Weeks later, on the 370th day, God finally commanded Noah's family and the animals to leave the ark. Noah first built an altar to God, who then made a covenant, symbolized by a rainbow. It was a promise never to destroy the world again. Comparisons with other ancient flood myths. The tale of a great flood is not unique to the Bible. Similar stories appear in various ancient cultures, suggesting that the concept of a catastrophic deluge may be a shared human memory rather than a single historical event. Some sources of these other mythological floods are the Epic of Gilgamesh, Hindu mythology, and Greek mythology. The Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the oldest known literary works, recounts the story of Utnapishtim, who was warned of an impending flood by the gods and built a boat to save his family and animals. He survived the Great Deluge, which was only 6 days and 6 nights in this story, and later became immortal. Aside from being a fascinating tale, it mirrors the Noah's Ark story in many ways. Utnapishtim also released birds, a dove, a swallow, and a raven, to find land, and a ship also landed upon a mountain after the flood. Like Noah, he sacrificed to his gods immediately upon setting foot on land again. Hindu mythology describes a great flood in the story of Manu, who was instructed by the god Vishnu to construct a boat and survive a deluge that wiped out humanity. Like Noah, Manu is described as righteous, but this time the flood was not a punishment for man's wickedness. Instead, it was simply part of the natural order of things. When the time of the flood came, the god Vishnu, in the form of a large fish, instructed Manu to build a boat and fill it with animals and seeds to repopulate Earth. When the flood began, Vishnu, still in fish form, instructed Manu to tie the boat to him so it could be dragged around and saved from destruction. When the flood was over and the waters receded, Manu's boat was also perched on the top of a mountain range, much like the flood stories in the Epic of Gilgamesh and Genesis. Greek mythology tells of Deucalion and Pyrrha, a couple who survived a divine flood by building a chest and repopulating Earth after the waters receded. The flood happened because Zeus, the king of gods, heard of the evil doings of humans and came to see for himself. He visited the house of a man named Lycaon, who committed 2 unforgivable sins against the god. He plotted to murder Zeus, and he served human flesh at his feast. Furious, Zeus announced his intention to destroy the entire human race and every living creature. His first act is to send a thunderbolt to destroy Lycaon's house. However, a man named Deucalion is warned of the flood by his father, Prometheus, one of the Titans. He builds a small boat, in some versions a chest, to carry him and his wife Pyrrha to safety. Then, Zeus calls the floodwaters and does not relent until he sees that all of life is gone, except for the couple in the boat. After 9 days, the ship lands on Mount Parnassus. They began repopulating Earth by throwing stones behind them, which turn into human bodies. Pyrrha and Deucalion go on to have 2 sons. The similarities between these myths suggest that large-scale flooding events in early human history may have spawned these recurring narratives. Scientific challenges to the Ark narrative. From a scientific perspective, analyzing Noah's Ark as a historical event raises several issues. These include animal logistics, geological evidence, the lack of archaeological evidence, and genetic diversity. One of the most significant issues is animal logistics. Housing males and females of every species, providing sufficient food, managing waste, and repopulating the planet presents serious biological and logistical problems. As for geological evidence, no global geological layer corresponds with a worldwide flood within the last 10,000 years. In fact, there is more evidence suggesting that such a flood never occurred. For example, at Specimen Ridge in Yellowstone National Park, multiple layers of ancient forests, possibly up to 27 separate layers, were buried by volcanic eruptions millions of years ago. These forests, now fossilized, formed between 56 and 33.9 million years ago, during the Eocene epoch. The trees were buried gradually, with each forest growing for decades to centuries before being covered by ash and debris from repeated volcanic activity. While some flood geology proponents claim these layers were deposited rapidly during Noah's flood, the evidence shows that their formation took at least 20,000 years, far longer than the flood's proposed timeline. The presence of root systems, soil layers, and intact tree rings indicates that these forests grew and were buried separately over thousands of years, not in a single catastrophic event. Many more geological examples disprove a global flood, but the Eniwetok Coral Atoll is another important one. In 1960, a researcher drilled deep into Eniwetok Atoll in the Pacific Ocean, extracting samples from its massive coral formations. The drilling revealed a thick cap of coral and limestone, which had been growing for millions of years atop volcanic rock. The deepest coral layers are estimated to be over 40 million years old. Corals require clear, shallow, warm waters and cannot grow in turbulent or murky conditions. A global flood would have choked the oceans with clay, silt, and debris, making coral growth impossible. Additionally, flood geology allows no more than 8,000 years for all modern reefs to develop. Yet this is only 5% of the time that just Eniwetok needed to reach its present size. The atoll stands as strong evidence against the idea that all modern coral reefs formed in such a short period. As for archaeological evidence of the Ark, explorers have searched for its remains on Mount Ararat, with some claiming to have found wooden structures or unusual geological formations resembling a ship. Unfortunately, there is no substantial archaeological evidence for the story. Finally, repopulating the planet with just one mating pair from each species poses a massive genetic problem. A severe genetic bottleneck would be caused if only a handful of surviving humans and animals were repopulating the entire Earth, and this would have left significant genetic markers in modern species, which has not been observed. These factors combined lead many to conclude that while a massive flood may have occurred, the global scope of Noah's flood, as described in the Bible, is unlikely. Myth, legend, or reality? Is Noah's Ark entirely mythical, a legend based on a historical event, or reality? The answer depends on how one interprets the story. From a religious and moral standpoint, the tale has deep symbolic meaning, teaching lessons about faith, obedience, and redemption. For many, the story of Noah's Ark is not about historical accuracy, but spiritual and moral lessons. The flood represents divine judgment, redemption, and the importance of faith. The Ark symbolizes salvation, mirroring other religious narratives of rebirth and renewal. This allegorical approach suggests that Noah's Ark was never intended as a literal history, but rather a parable reflecting the human condition. Some believe wholeheartedly in the story precisely as it happened in the Bible, while others believe it is a legend inspired by smaller-scale floods in ancient Mesopotamia. Whether you believe the story of Noah's Ark is true or not, it is one of human history's most enduring and fascinating tales. Whether seen as a literal account, a myth, or a reflection of a shared regional memory of a flood, its impact on culture, religion, and storytelling remains profound. How would you like to get a deeper understanding of history, impress your friends, and predict the future more accurately based on past events? If this sounds like something you might be into, then check out the brand new Captivating History Book Club by clicking the first link in the description. Also, grab your free Mythology Bundle ebook while they're still available. All links are in the description. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this.